Coming up, you would not stop asking about it, so we have seen The Last Jedi. We're going to talk about it in this very special episode of DIS Pop. DIS Pop is brought to you by Dreams Unlimited Travel, experts at helping you plan the perfect vacation. Visit them on the web at dreamsunlimitedtravel.com. Well, hello, everybody. I am your host, Ryno Clavin, and beside me, as always, here, Craig Williams.
Oh, hoy, hoy.
And we are here because you would not stop asking about it, and we have both seen it, Star Wars: The Last Jedi.
Yes.
Very diversive film here.
Divisive?
Is that the word?
Yeah, diverse.
Divisive? What's the one where the audience
It divides. It divides us. It's divisive.
It was also very diversive.
Yes. It was.
Diverse.
I would agree with that,
Good
yeah.
for them.
Lots of aliens.
Yes, lots of, different species all around this time. So, those actually, I did learn a fun fact about the species in this, by the way. There was a new species that was in The Force Awakens, and apparently every time one of these species is in the movies from now on, and people are going to hate this fact, it is named after a Beastie Boys song. And
do I even know this one?
I can't give you specific examples. However, one of them was an X-Wing fighter for the Resistance in The Force Awakens. It's the ones that kind of look like anteaters. They have long, flat faces. Mm-hmm. And there was one in The Last Jedi. I want to say he was a rebel. He was still in the Resistance, but then there was one that was on the planet. No, that was Joseph Gordon-Levitt. The southern alien that was like, I told them not to park on the beach. But we'll get to that in a second. Anyway,
okay.
So we both seen the movie. I'd like to just overall say that we both enjoyed it. I think Craig, flat out, you loved it.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I have loved every Star Wars movie, and then some have just settled after some time. Mm-hmm. Some have settled better than others, and that's okay. There is no such thing as a perfect Star Wars movie yet.
Everybody's going to have their favorite. Yeah. Everybody's got a different thing about this franchise they love. You know what I mean?
And while some people are saying that this is their favorite one ever, I'm not going to tell them they're wrong, because you know what? What they connect to is different than what I connect to. And that's just the case. I will say this one is very high for me. I still need to see it again. Mm-hmm. But barring that, it's in the top 3 or 4 for me.
So I have actually seen it twice because I saw it the first night and I saw it the next night. Oh, sorry. I will say to anybody that was even on the fence about it or you didn't have stuff, give it another shot. Go see it again. Because I went close together. I went Thursday night and then I went Friday morning, and I did that for The Force Awakens as well. But sometimes it's like, when there's a movie I'm really excited about and you see the trailers so much, you're kind of looking to spot that stuff, especially in a movie like a Star Wars movie with some really beautiful highlighted moments of great cinematography and catchy one-liners, so good to have you back and all this stuff. You kind of sit in the movie and you're almost like waiting. It's like a checklist in my brain. It's always in the back of my brain, and not everybody processes it like that. That's just me. But it released my anxiety to see it that first time, and then seeing it again definitely helped with that.
And the world has built up such a big expectation for what Star Wars should be, when really you have to go back to the origins, go back to when George Lucas was making Star Wars, the first one, and he couldn't get any studio to release it because it was essentially a B movie representation of some of his favorite movies, whether it was Flash Gordon, or I believe he took a lot of the some stuff from Akira Kurosawa, the acclaimed Japanese director. He just kind of took his favorite inspirations and blended them all together in Star Wars. And so it just ended up being this complete surprise smash hit. And over time, it's gotten bigger and bigger and bigger. But at the end of the day, it's just a movie. If your expectations are beyond what they should be, then that's maybe you need to rethink your type of fandom.
Here's the thing with that, too. I seen a petition come out that people are asking it to be stripped from the canon. That's not how it works. Yeah. You're not the author. You don't get to tell J.K. Rowling you didn't like Half-Blood Prince. You don't get to bring certain characters back from the dead. You're on this journey, good and bad, or whatever. You don't have to like every step of the journey, but you're not the storyteller. Yeah. And I would actually say, and this is a fascinating thing for people. Go back to the original Star Wars, like Craig said, and I would even say, read a little bit about even where the story originated from, because I even read something today that I didn't even know about, which is that originally, because they were saying how Rian Johnson's Last Jedi has kind of shifted how Star Wars is told permanently, and I didn't understand the article. I still don't 100% understand it. However, apparently, this is why it says in a galaxy far, far away, a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, is because we're being told the story is being recanted apparently to the Wills. We've talked about this when we did the Rogue One thing, or at least I did. So the blind monk makes reference to the Wills, and the Wills are like the keeper of the stories of the universe or something like that. And originally, I guess Star Wars was called The Adventures of Luke Skywalker Saga 1, The Star Wars. And so it was supposed to be R2-D2 was telling this story generations later to the Wills, and that's how we were hearing it. And I was like, how the hell was I supposed to know that? And then I guess there's kind of a reference to C-3PO at the end of Return of the Jedi is telling some of the Ewoks the whole story, and that kind of is a bounce back to when he said in A New Hope he was a terrible storyteller, blah, blah, blah. But apparently this movie is saying that because of the way it's told, it kind of shifts that tone around, and I was like, okay, those are the people who are not going to enjoy the Star Wars movies from here on out for the rest of their life, because it doesn't matter. That if it was something I couldn't see and explicitly pick up within those movies, that is where the story is. I understand we love all the other stuff, and some people loved the extended legacy or whatever they refer to the books now.
It's now Legends.
The unofficial canon. That was, to me, that was never part of this, because I never saw on screen how many children Luke and Han had, if they even had children, until The Force Awakens says they did have a child. They had one child, and he was a bad child, and so for me, there's gotta be a point where I understand you love it, and we all know I have franchises that I love too, because I do love Star Wars, but you've got to go with the storyteller, and there are going to be ups and downs of those. Episode 1, 2, and 3, and you have to go for this journey. So we talked about overall. I liked it. You liked it. Yeah. Let's talk about the good. Okay. Let's just run through our favorite things for me. Do you want to start here?
I can start.
Wait. Spoilers, by the way.
Yes.
We're not treading lightly here. This is going to be spoiler heavy, pretty much.
Yeah, 100% spoilers. I'm not holding back on anything. You've either seen this already, or you're trying to figure out why you want to see it, and spoilers just have to come up in this. Yeah. The first thing I will like, and I'll just jump right into spoiler territory, is they made a big shakeup by killing Snoke right away.
Yeah, surprising.
Not right away in the movie,
twist,
but but right away in the sense that some people got the idea, the perception that he was an Emperor replacement for this new trilogy, kind of like
overlording the whole thing,
Palpatine, Darth Sidious was in the others. This was the new version of that. No, he is killed off by Kylo Ren in that, which then leads into
pretty awesome way.
It literally leads into arguably one of the best lightsaber battle moments on screen, right up there with the Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan fight against Darth Maul.
Yeah, I would definitely argue that. I thought even just visually that entire scene was pretty awesome, from the moment the lightsaber goes off to Rey's hand coming up and grabbing it again, and then there's it's going to be awesome as soon as she leans up on Kylo Ren's back and they start fighting. And this is, I don't want to go through everything. We'll tell you a little bit of props. This is essentially going to be for people who have seen the movie. So, but the guards looked cool. I thought that whole scene looked cool, and I would arguably say leads into the best scene in the movie, or one of the best scenes, or at least for me, one of the best parts of the story, where it becomes a twist on its head of Kylo Ren, she thinks Rey has just succeeded in getting Kylo Ren to turn to the light because he just helped her. He killed the bad guy, and then they fought together to stop the war. And then he says, "Oh no, that's not what I was doing. Like, you need to come with me. We need to get rid of everything. We need to get rid of the past.
Yeah,
kill it, and just leave the Jedi, leave everything behind, and we will rule the galaxy." And that's a very heavy-handed. That has, for me, that was a callback to like Anakin's mentality in like Revenge of the Sith.
And so circling that all the way back around, this story is, in my opinion, this story is about two characters. It's about Kylo Ren and it is about Rey.
Oh, 100%.
And with that, Snoke was unnecessary. It was a character that they could have come up with some finagled plot on why he needed to be more important, why he needed to stay with it. But he played his part. Yeah, he played his part. And I think with this one, the entire series is at a point now where they're looking at characters and saying, we might have to create stories to keep some characters involved, and in some circumstances we will do that.
Negative parts of the film we'll get to,
and in other circumstances with Snoke, he doesn't need to be a character. Kylo Ren is now the ultimate villain, and that was a perfect move.
And it can be frustrating too, because I rewatched The Force Awakens last night, and I love The Force Awakens. For me, definitely one of my favorite Star Wars movies. Empire, Force Awakens. We'll give you a ranking maybe at the end, but I love. For me, that's the parts of Star Wars that I like the most. And this also had those parts that were missing from The Force Awakens for me too, like the Empire stuff, where it's a little bit more. It's not always the light side and the dark side. There is wishy-washy stuff. There's arms dealers in the middle, which was an interesting thing brought up in this movie. Yeah. But I really liked the expectations of things. Like, it is frustrating because you really do want to know where Snoke came from and how but do we ever really know where the Emperor came from? I mean, we do from the prequels, but we don't really know before that. But essentially, Snoke, what we needed to know was a bad guy who got his hands on a powerful Jedi and turned his heart, and there was no saving him. And so what's going to happen from there? Essentially, it made Kylo Ren go from the kind of, in the Force Awakens, he had that he's being torn apart, light side, dark side, and killing Han Solo was supposed to be the solidification. So he's still on shaky ground, because this movie picks up immediately following the events of The Force Awakens, and this was the final, I'm tired of standing on shaky ground. I am taking my place in the universe.
Okay, and just to clarify even further with all that you said too, this Star Wars, even though Legends has been basically ended, there is the new canon of Star Wars that not only includes all the movies, the 9 movies that will be in the trilogy, plus Rogue One, Solo, everything that's made from this point now essentially is canon. So Star Wars Rebels, that is canon. That's ending after this one, but it's been such a success for them. I don't think it's the last time they're going to do an animated show.
Oh, they're working on that the actual Netflix show, or not the Netflix, the streaming show for their.
There's still a ton of books coming out all the time. One just came out about Captain Phasma in the past couple months.
Well, there was one about Leia too, and I just read about it, called Leia, right?
They had Bloodline. That was the one that really focused on Leia before Force Awakens.
Okay, because there is one that I just read about, that the character of Laura Dern's character, who you might be like, where did this lady come from? She's a character in that book, and Leia meets her, and they actually are on the planet Crait at one point in that movie, and that's how they knew where they were going in this movie. And I was like, I don't like necessarily maybe how heavily it not necessarily relied on you knowing that. I mean, I appreciate that was in a book that came out before this, but it was one of those, it felt a little weird in the movie, but that could have just been from editing.
Yeah, I forgot. They did release 2 or 3 books that all came out previous to the movie coming out. Yeah. So that could have been one of them. I didn't look into those ones yet. But yeah, there's plenty enough. So if you want to know what Snoke's story is, and enough people are wanting to know, I'm sure one day Disney and Lucas are going to make the idea into some other series, a book. I still want to know what the heck's happening with the Knights of Ren.
Well, exactly. And now, as rewatching The Force Awakens, I was like, that's a big mystery that I was like, oh, no, don't you dare leave this one out. This has to be resolved. Because my thing is, are they all dead? Or are they out there still? And that didn't answer this explicitly. And so I do love that J.J. Abrams is coming back in, because some stuff, the stuff that wasn't completely turned away from, can still come back around.
Yeah.
And, you see them in the Force stream. He's leading them. So they could be just dispersed in the galaxy for all we know. But I just lost my train of thought. You just said something that reminded me of it, and it was gone for a second.
Well, maybe it'll come back. Do we want to go on to either Finn or Laura Dern?
Okay. Well, we were talking about our pluses.
Let's just bounce around. Let's
Okay.
Right.
So then let's bring it back to what Craig said about characters having to take. In order to keep characters in, they have to kind of fabricate moments for them. So I had read prior to the Force Awakens. I think it was prior to the Force Awakens even being released. And we knew that Rian Johnson was the confirmed director for the next one. Whenever we found that out, I had heard that he had written a script already, and that it involved 2 new characters. And I believe Rose was one of those characters. I don't know the names of the characters. I just know there were 2 female characters that were in it, and that they were going to kind of take that. Rey, Finn, and Poe would be secondary characters in the next movie. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, that's an interesting choice, because, in the other trilogies, it's no character ever took a secondary step back, And so Force Awakens came out. I think Disney kind of was like, no, these are our main characters of this story. These are going to be our characters. And so I do have this feeling when watching The Force Awakens that, and we can talk about the character and stuff, but I felt like Finn was a character that Rian Johnson wasn't going to have in this movie, and didn't really know what to do with necessarily, and maybe didn't even want to write that character into the movie. And so therefore the scenes with Finn and Rose feel very like, it just feels like a separate movie almost. Like it's a little contrived, and one of the big arguments is, like, for me even, I didn't like Finn's character in this movie, and I love Finn. I love Finn from The Force Awakens, and in this movie he just didn't do anything for me. Even you see it in the preview, when I thought it was going to be a big moment when he faces off Phasma again, and I was like, okay, it's coming around, he's fighting back to the Empire, and this is going to be, him standing back up to them and being afraid. But they kind of just rewrote him the same way, where he was trying to desert again to go save Rey and then run. And I was like, I thought we were over this, buddy. And that's my feeling on it. And I know you have your feelings about him too.
Yeah, I do. I enjoy the character, but I feel like The Force Awakens truly did basically end his story. That he didn't have a place whereas with Poe, he wasn't supposed to be as big as he was in The Force Awakens.
I think that every time
evolved.
I watch it.
Yeah, he is completely evolved now to the point where he is back kind of in that main, whatever you want to call it. It's still, regardless, it's the story of Rey and Kylo Ren. Everyone else is just supporting in that.
Yeah.
And
it's a story about the resistance, as a whole, and then specifically Kylo Ren and them. So these characters who are part of the resistance are sprinkled in, and then it's these real focus on those 2.
Yeah, but with Finn, it was just it was kind of his story had a nice logical ending, despite the fact that he tried to fight Kylo Ren and nearly died doing it.
Sliced right up the back with a lightsaber.
But besides that, he was kind of at an end. He overcame his problem, which was, I don't want to, I want to run. And then instead he stayed.
Stood up and fought. Yeah.
He fought. He suffered for it. But so then the only real thing that I could see in this movie, based on how it ended up being, he either could have this side story with Rose, which he did, and I don't mind it, or he could have been a background character in the Resistance and just kind of essentially like Billy Lord was, where she's just in the background doing stuff, helping the ultimate cause that Poe's trying to fight with, but not being a major character.
We did have this discussion before we recorded this, the morning after I saw the movie, and so when I went back and rewatched Force Awakens, I'll tell you this is what I was missing too from it, because I didn't know I wasn't remembering it. You always have these characters in these movies that kind of pair off with each other. Yeah. You know what I mean? And you love the chemistry those characters have together. Poe and Finn had a chemistry, and to the point where they've been shipped as a couple. You know, that we wanted Poe and them to be together, and we're like, we don't know, it could happen. It's, you know, we don't know that there aren't gay main characters in this series and stuff, and they're never really together in this movie, and I felt like that was a shame to me, because I think that's another part of that that was disappointing. And one of the things about The Force Awakens that I thought was so charming is also when Rey and Finn meet each other. He doesn't know what he's doing. He's just trying to do good, and she doesn't even need his help really. Like, they need each other, but in not the conventional way, where like he gets knocked out, wakes up, and it's like, oh my God, are you okay? And she's like, yeah. Like, that's one of my favorite parts of the movie, because I just love that, like, she's like, yeah, of course I'm okay. Like, and it's just like, it shows how pure his character could be, and how, you know, he's just trying to do the right thing. And I see what you're saying too. His story came full force.
Full circle too.
Full circle in The Force Awakens. And I think it was up to the director to create a new story for him where he did feel a part of it. And if not, then he should have been essentially like Lando was in Return of the Jedi. You know what I mean? Lando had a big part, but we still wanted to see Billy D. Williams, and so I would have been okay with that, I guess. I just kind of didn't like. He seemed very angry the whole movie, and I was like, that's not really like who he is in the first one.
And my point that I brought up to you was, if they kept him as a background character, people would have complained. They created this side story for him. People haven't really been receptive to it.
Yeah, it just went on too long.
Yeah, they weren't. It was going to affect someone in some way, but you know, Finn's still around for the ride, so that's
well. What did you think
good.
of the new character then? Because we've mentioned Rose a whole bunch. You know,
I do like Rose.
I did not like Rose. I didn't. I absolutely like hated her the first time I saw the movie. By the end of it, for the exact opposite reasons that you like her. Like, you thought she was good. I thought she was a terrible actress. And then I saw it again, and I was like, all right, it's not that bad. She just fed some of the cheesy lines, and she does have what I don't like, which is expositional dialogue repeatedly. She has it multiple times, because it falls on her to explain what Canto Bight is, the casino planet. It falls on her to kind of explain the arms dealer stuff. It falls on her. So she's got a couple moments that feel a little heavy-handed, or like, I don't know. It's just the way it's spoken. It didn't click with me. I appreciate it more the second time. My thing is, again, I think her story was too long. I just didn't care for the created love triangle. If there is even a love triangle, we don't know that for sure at this point. But when she, like, you do it for the things you love, and she kissed him, she could have just been kissing him. I don't know, but I didn't like that. I'm not against her returning. Her sister's storyline too in the beginning went on it made the opening of the movie a little bit longer than it needed to be, where she's kicking the remote, trying to get the remote to fall. So 3 kicks, then the remote falls, then it misses her, and then she's got to reach down and grab the remote, and you're like, oh my gosh, like that could have been like about 45 seconds shorter, and it would have been fine. I mean, don't get me wrong, I do love seeing the rebels. I don't like seeing them die, but I like seeing them go all the way for something they believe in, and
yeah. And with that, I feel the same way too. There was many places in the movie that could have been trimmed just a little bit, but some people have a different idea of building the suspension than others do.
I would have been in favor of, you don't even have to change the runtime of the movie. Trim that. Give me more of Rey and Luke together on the island.
Yeah, I'd agree with that too. But overall, I felt like she is a character that will have a lot of promise in the future, because I feel like a lot of her core belief system is like what she kind of had one monologue about in there, and her belief in the resistance and good in the
well, she came from like a labor camp
world.
or something like that, because she said she was on a planet where they mined for ore, and so her character did introduce stuff that I am interested in, that they've never really touched on before, like the people that build this stuff, and the kind of the enslavement of other species and aliens and stuff like that, and then it brought in Benicio del Toro's character, which I did think was it was fascinating to me, because he's good or bad. I mean, he might be bad right now, but he wasn't all bad. It was he was essentially like Lando, but only took the left instead of the right when Lando went to the right.
Exactly. No, and I agree with that too. Benicio del Toro, fantastic, is DJ in this.
Yeah.
Laura Dern, That's questionable.
And I don't know. I love Laura Dern. We all love Laura Dern. But it's just. Her character kind of came out of nowhere, and I was okay at first with it kind of being like she was the successor. Maybe she was going to be Leia's successor, but it just kind of didn't really pay off. I did think her character's got a great moment at the end when she light speeds. Like, I thought that scene was beautiful looking.
Oh, it was gorgeous.
Yeah, when it goes through the ship and it goes through the other ships and they just have that moment of silence. And I thought that was really, really cool. It just, like, when she's got that scene where she's talking to Leia, I've said it before, and I said it the second time I saw it, it just feels like the character is... like, they didn't know they were being filmed, and they were kind of just talking.
Yeah.
And not in the good, natural way. It feels a little like... it felt like a fan of somebody saying goodbye to that person. And, again... I've read another article about this, too, about how this movie has taken on new contexts, like different scenes. Had Carrie Fisher not passed away, would we be reacting to her stuff the way we are reacting to her stuff? And I'd say no. I'd say the scene between her and Luke would be different, and the scene between her and Laura Dern would feel different too.
Yeah, the other thing too with Laura Dern's character, I feel like it ended up being a situation where they had this role that Laura Dern may have and I don't know this at all. I feel like maybe she approached them saying, "I would really love to do something in Star Wars."
Yeah, and they were like, "We'll break you apart."
Exactly, and we'll give you this character because I feel like they didn't need a marquee actress to be this. And the discussion about whether or not her character was important wouldn't be a debate if it wasn't a marquee actress.
Where's Grand Moff Tarkin? Where's she at?
I'd say, Did
she die in one of the other movies?
Well, you're talking about Mon Mothma.
That's what I meant. I'm sorry. Grand Moff Tarkin's definitely
he's dead.
I meant. I'm sorry. Yeah, because she was in Rogue One, and
yes. But she was in Rogue One, but that was before A New Hope. She was in Return of the Jedi, but I don't know what she's been doing. That's been 30 years since Return of the Jedi.
See, and that's what I'm thinking is like maybe she should have stepped in as an old woman, or like what you said. Like, I don't necessarily, that wasn't a marquee actor, but it was, it's like a character. It's like kind of how Admiral Akbar showed up in Return of the Jedi, but then we loved him. It should have been something like that.
Aside, I feel like they could have just casted nobody as this character who's going to step in, and
it was almost distracting.
Yeah, and that's absolutely the point that I would make of it. It was kind of distracting having a marquee name being in there, but maybe for the average person who doesn't watch every movie, they don't know Laura Dern outside of Jurassic Park. And that's true. That's it. So maybe it's not and she looks a lot older than when she was in Jurassic Park as a
still looks good.
20-year-old. So maybe they don't even pick up and recognize like we do as nerds. So I'll even I'll play along with that a little bit, but so kind of going off some of the other things she does, the big thing people are saying about it is, well, Finn's whole storyline of having to leave off and go find the master code breaker it could have been solved if she would have just told Poe the plan of what they were doing.
That's also not how like Resistance works. The leader doesn't tell everyone the plan. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But at the same time, I am like, well, why not? Why not tell them that plan? That codebreaker thing bugs me a little bit because it just seems like that ship that they took could go to light speed and get away and then come back at light speed. Why weren't more people on the ship? And then they were like, well, and then there is another moment in the movie where I have questioned the science, and it's stupid to do that in Star Wars, but they say like why wasn't the First Order able to catch up with, and they say it in the movie why they weren't able to catch up with the Resistance was because they're lighter and faster. And I was like, it is outer space. It doesn't work that way. Like all it needs is one engine. So I'm just like, if your engine is more powerful, you have no weight in outer space, right? Isn't that how space works? But I don't know. I'm not a Star Wars scientist, so I don't know. But anyway, that's here nor there.
You're thinking a little too much now, yeah.
But I did hear that line the next time, and I was like, now I'm always going to be thinking about that for the rest of my life. But it doesn't matter. But I do agree. It did feel like their side plot was very convoluted because it was kind of like, should they really have left? Should they not have really left? I did like Poe's storyline because I did like that. they were, they even addressed this in the last movie, that he is very hot-headed.
Yeah.
And this was kind of Poe really coming into himself as a leader. And I feel like they set him up to maybe even be the leader of the Resistance by the end of the movie.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, he has that trigger-happy pilot attitude the entire way through. And what is great about it is you see after the first sequence, the bombing of the dreadnought, I believe.
Yeah, I think that's what it's
the
called.
Dreadnought, the biggest ship that they have in their fleet beyond Snoke's, I believe. But you have Poe doing a dumb mission where they wipe out all of their bombers and most of their fleet just to try to take down this one ship, making the complete wrong call and questioning all of his decisions. It screws them over completely, but he feels like he's accomplished something. So then his next step is, well, I'm going to try to do this mutiny and overtake Laura Dern's character because I don't think she's making the right decisions. Again, because he had this whole side plot going along also with the Master Codebreaker and hopefully turning off their tracking system. And if that would have worked, if they could have turned off the tracking system, which they obviously don't, they get caught in the middle of it because DJ sells them out. If that would have worked, he would have been in another sense, he would have been a hero for that temporary time, but instead fails once again.
And I like that because it's kind of like not every time do you go off and be the rogue can you be the hero.
And in that case, he thought about both sides. With the bombing, he only thought about one thing. Yeah. With this one, he thinks about both sides, still fails, finally gets on Crait, and then finally makes a good decision as a leader. And after learning from Leia and Laura Dern's character, he finally makes that transition into being a better leader. And I really like that he had serious development with that.
Oh yeah, it was definitely his time to shine in this thing too, for sure. And I think like we already said, I think they're really setting him up to kind of be maybe her successor. We do have to talk about, because Pete didn't like this part. But my issue in this movie was they really kind of made Leia invincible. How are they going to take care of the character for the next movie? It is up to J.J. Abrams to do that, and that's fine. What did you think when she was in outer space and started flying through space like the Flying Nun?
It was tough because that was a moment where I think everyone in the theater audibly gasped. Yeah, because we knew from the one trailer.
You were like, "Oh, she's dead!"
But we knew from that one trailer that we saw where Kylo Ren was circling in his ship that he was kind of like channel Leia, and so I was like, "Oh God, he is going to be the one to kill her." And then when it wasn't him, when he backed off and the other fighters ended up doing the deed, I was like, "Oh my God, this is just heartbreaking." And seeing her float out there, it was one of those moments I was like,
oh God, they did kill her and they tricked us.
That's exactly what I thought too. And then she came back and it's like, my thought was, okay, a little weird. I would like some context, but at the end of the day, there is no doubt that Leia is strong with the Force. Yeah. She is a Skywalker. So I think
it was survival instinct. So it's not even when people are like, well, she's not trained with the Force. And I was like, yeah, but you've seen it. She can feel that stuff across the galaxy. Yeah. And she's dying. All those midi-chlorians are going to kick in and save her life. Yeah. I know people are probably...
Rey's also not trained in the Force.
And she was able to get the guy to put the gun down and leave the door and let her out and do all this stuff. But I thought... Honestly, I actually thought it was great. My thing with the Force is think back. I remember when I was a kid and I watching them for the first time ever. My mom sat me down and we watched them one each night. And when we got to Empire Strikes Back and Lucas hanging upside down right before the Wampas comes in to get him, and his lightsaber's in the ice and he stops and he focuses and the lightsaber starts shaking and it jumps into his hand. I looked at my mom and I went, I don't understand. How did he do that? And she was like, he used the Force. And I was like, he can move stuff with the Force? You just went with it because then later in the movie there's a training sequence and Yoda's lifting rocks or lifts the X-wing and he lifts the rock. I don't think there's a moment in A New Hope where anybody moves anything explicitly. Obi-Wan does the mind tricks and it makes it sound like something falls in the distance. I don't know if they threw something or it's made something fall over. I don't know. But the Force is a thing we never know all the way about, so I'm okay learning little things here and there.
It's mysterious and powerful.
Right.
And that's just it at the end of the day. And as long as the people who are creating these movies are saying that, well, yeah, this could happen in this context, it's going to be what happens.
Yeah.
So,
well, let's talk about the Rey and Luke stuff then, because we haven't talked about them at all. I enjoyed all the stuff on the island. What did you think of the Kylo Ren's backstory with Luke? You know what I mean? Why Luke was there and how it all went down.
I like that they played around with seeing the different sides to it. So, of course, Snoke was linking both Rey and
I like
and Kylo Ren together. So they were, despite being in two different places, they were having conversations as if they were looking right at each other, which was very cool. Used a lot of times really well. And then just that back and forth perception of Kylo Ren really believing that Luke was trying to kill him, and that's what started the path away from all of his training. And then hearing Luke's side of it, I like that there was that conflict in there, that it wasn't even in terms of the movie, some people might side with Kylo Ren and some people side with Luke, and I like that.
I think that Luke is... It was a moment of weakness. Yeah. I do agree. There is that weakness where you're like, are you really going to kill this kid? And I think even he was just he felt an impulse and a thing. What I love about Luke Skywalker, especially in this movie, is that Luke Skywalker is a master Jedi and that he feels still. And that I felt like the master Jedis in episode 1 and so forth in the prequels, I was like, why does anybody want to be a Jedi? Obi-Wan was always my favorite because I always felt like Obi-Wan was still emotional. Obi-Wan cared for Anakin. That's why he trained him, because of his love of Qui-Gon, And then he became emotionally involved with him in a relationship, essentially, whether that be brothers or father-son or whatever. And I felt like the Jedi are very cold in those. And what Luke showed me is that you can still be emotional. He felt shame, he felt things, he felt love, he felt this stuff. And I don't know. I liked his representation of what it meant to master the Force better, I guess,
Yeah.
It is hard because I know, major spoiler here, the big issue, people are upset Luke Skywalker.
If they've been watching all of this and still didn't know it was spoiler, so Luke Skywalker does in fact
bite it.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't even say that. He moves. He moves. He like Obi-Wan in A New Hope, where Obi-Wan takes that moment and says, this is it. I'm going to become one with the Force. It's kind of the same idea, not struck down or killed by anybody, but he just, you could even argue that Obi-Wan wasn't struck down or killed by anybody, but same idea. But I want to, there's one thing, and I only seen it twice, and I still don't understand it. What was her dream? When she goes in that pit on the island, I was a little disappointed with that, because the Force dream that she has in The Force Awakens when she touches the lightsaber is beautifully made and shot. And then you get this one that's very weird. And I'm not even talking about style of shooting or whatever, but when she's clapping her hands and showing the thing, I didn't understand it. And was it Kylie that told me that she was I took it as to mean that it didn't mean anything. It was all about how her parents and everything was part of the story, and that it was trying to be reflective of how the story seems to keep going on, history repeating itself, and then at the end. Yeah. Well, I even thought about that more after she did say that too. It's the thought that was Luke did not want her to go down that path. It was towards the dark side, going down into that pit, and not in a bad way, but when you cross over to the dark side, there's confusion, there's conflict, and that's essentially what she did travel into. She traveled into this essentially a labyrinth of sorts. You just
said something that made me think of something too. I'm going to say this right now. I'm just realizing this as you're saying this. One of the things I think I actually love about the character of Rey is she doesn't have that conflict.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There was never a moment where you were Rey's going to turn to the dark side. Luke could have, I guess, or whatever. I haven't felt like that with Rey yet. I mean, have you?
No, not at all.
And that's why I think she's very strong. I don't know. There's something interesting about that, what you just said.
Yeah, but they're definitely, but that's also the impact that being tempted by the dark side, while it was blending off what was happening in reality. At the end of the day, and that's what Kylie's point was, she wanted the whole thing going down there. She wanted to see her parents.
It reminded me of when Harry Potter goes to the mirror.
Yeah.
show me
kind
my
of.
parents.
But in this one, it ended up being essentially just a trick. Not the dark side, light side can't show her parents. But then, as we find out later from Kylo Ren, feel it. You've known it all along. Your parents were nobody. And you are nobody.
I've read something about this because this is one of the reveals in the movie that people are either way. I think it's cool. I think it's interesting. However, the only hesitation I have here, and it might be corrected in the next movie, is that like the Skywalker, it wasn't a part of a. There was this whole prophecy about somebody bringing. Well, it might not have been a Skywalker, I guess, because the prophecy was about somebody bringing balance to the Force. It was supposed to be Anakin, and then we assumed it was Luke, and now maybe it was just Luke guiding that final person that will do it or whatever. But we don't know yet. Anyway, that was my only thing, because when Luke goes, you're like, oh no. I mean, maybe it could be her. I don't know.
Yeah, it could be her. But she didn't need to be from someone. Yeah, we all got hyped up thinking that Rey was going to be someone important. Who's her parents? Could it be Luke? Could it be Obi-Wan?
Rian Johnson said he wrote that scene and they played it like it was an emotional truth. He said, I don't know that will stick. That somebody won't say he was lying. Yeah. Or that he was just saying, you are trash. You know what I mean? If he was just putting her down, and she was just, feel what you've always felt. It's like, and that I like that because it echoes the sentiment from the first movie where Maz says to her, feel it. They're not coming back for you. On the planet, and then I do like the idea of her being nobody, so I do kind of hope they stick to that. But they could also go back to that. But Rian Johnson essentially said, like, I wrote it as if that was the truth. I don't know that won't change.
And at the end of the day, too, Kylo Ren was trying to get Rey to turn. Mm-hmm. Part of we all know the lines: fear leads to anger, anger leads to hate. Hate leads to suffering. And so putting these thoughts in her mind, putting these over emotional things, just like Anakin's downfall. You want to try to turn a person based on emotions.
He was trying to do what he felt to her. Like he wants to be somebody, and he was trying to get her to follow that. Like now you can be somebody. And I will say this, the phenomenal acting, Adam Driver, really just one of those things where you're like, man, they picked somebody who, like, this will be the role of his career, obviously, but
yeah, he's done many good things up to his turn getting into Star Wars. I mean, when they announced the cast, essentially John Boyega and Daisy Ridley were the unknowns, and then you had Oscar Isaac, who he was starting on the path up of being a very good actor, doing a lot of independent movies and stuff, but really making a name for himself. Adam Driver, same way, girls kind of put him on the map on a much bigger level, but he acted in many movies too, where he was very good. Even Donald Gleason, he was really out of nowhere.
Him and Oscar Isaac were in that movie together, that Ex Machina, and then Oscar Isaac and Adam Driver, you told me, were inside Llewellyn Davis together.
Llewellyn Davis, and
I still have yet to see it, but I hear it's amazing.
Oh, I like it. Wasn't everyone's favorite Coen Brothers movie, but you know what? Not every one of their movies is for everyone. Yeah. So, but we're not here to talk about that. Back to the point, though, is that basically of the 5 people that were getting touted as the new people coming in, 3 of the 5 were, I would say, experienced actors. The other 2 weren't, but I personally didn't see the acting problems in the movie. Yes, there was some bad dialogue written like every Star Wars movie.
Star Wars movie's
Everyone has bad dialogue, so let's cut the crap on that one. Stop saying that this was worse than others. Stop saying it's the worst since the prequels. Rogue One was very choppy on dialogue too.
And I'll tell you right now, this movie, Rogue One, is not... I know people like it for the aesthetic, the nostalgia, whatever. It's got major first act problems. Like, there is a pointless character. It's got moments. I think I still like this better than Rogue One. I don't dislike Rogue One. It's like what you said. I like Star Wars. Yes, I don't like the other ones as much. Some of them are whatever. And, you could argue the prequels are flat out, some of them terrible. But if you cut through the stuff, there's interesting things in there. And so... I don't want to hear that. I don't think at any moment during the movie it was like, man, this is bad writing, this is bad whatever, this is bad anything. I loved it, and I was genuinely surprised. Do I feel like it was touted, because this movie was very touted, like it's turning Star Wars on its head, it's doing whatever. I didn't necessarily feel like that when I left, that I was like, my world has been rocked to the core. I mean...
No. And I don't, even if we wouldn't have heard that, I don't think it would have been rocked to the core. I think it would have just been...
I would have been said there were surprises, in good ways,
It's all, again, we've said it multiple times, it comes back to expectations. Your expectations might have been out of line. I want to see more Captain Phasma.
I do.
It has been
really, wasted character. Number one wasted character in these new trilogies.
If you really think about it, why does Captain Phasma need to be bigger? This, again, it just happens. Gwendolyn Christie is a great actress, and if it wasn't for the fact she was in Game of Thrones, I don't think anyone would give two craps about Captain Phasma, besides the fact that she's marketed in basically everything.
Well, there was that big push for her in the last one, Yeah,
and marketing is... If you follow movies enough, marketing's a beast. I wouldn't mind her being in it more, but she's just a cog in the army.
I'd like to see
she's not a leader.
I'd like to see... I thought there was going to be, what is she to Finn besides just she was her captain? I want to see a little bit more, and I want to see it pay off. I don't think she's dead.
And no, I think that's going to be the recurring thing. She was in a scenario where you thought she was dead in the first one, most likely.
Yeah.
Comes back. And, start to see it on the run up. Well, Gwendolyn Christie's still in it. She's doing the press for everything. You think she's dead in this one? No, she's coming back.
Yeah,
she absolutely is coming back. A couple more points to make on it. The humor. A lot of people found it unnecessary. Where do you fall?
Oh no, I agree with people that say with how Rian Johnson views humor in the Star Wars movies. That and my mom has said this too. And it's the same with like Harry Potter. They're kind of innately funny a little bit, It's like the humor works so well because it's the levity to the drama, and it really gives you that moment of relief. And I even just watching The Force Awakens, it's Han and Chewie, when he just oh you're cold, That's always been there, all that stuff. And especially in The Force Awakens. I thought The Force Awakens was very lighthearted, you know. And it's got
it was.
darker moments, I guess. But overall, it was trying to be the skim of the surface of being like, these are all the reasons why we love Star Wars and how we're going to do this right. It was just a movie that proved we can make good Star Wars movies again. And I think even Empire's got humor in it. And I think... that I will say there's like one or two moments where maybe I'm like, well, I don't know. That humor felt a little out of place. But come on, the opening thing where he's like, I'm holding for general hugs. I thought that was hilarious.
And you know what? That's also one thing too. Clearly, if no one would have laughed in the theaters, and if you're watching it at home, maybe you won't find it funny. Maybe you won't even recognize it as humor. But I think in the theater setting, when you have a full packed theater, when people start to laugh, you start to realize, you start to see the humor. There is a clear difference between watching a comedy in a full theater with lots of eager people and watching it at home by yourself. So you have to also take this all in context that, there was this humor written, but when Rian Johnson was writing it, maybe he didn't see a lot of the humor in some of this stuff. Maybe he saw it as just like little side one-offs that weren't seen to be like this, and then fanboys are just getting all butthurt on it.
One of my favorite moments in this movie is kind of a funny moment. And no, it's not the one where he slaps her hand when she's reaching for the Force. Although that one to me, of all the humorous moments, that felt the most like, I don't know. Like they probably came up with that in the moment, and then they just kept it in. I thought the scene where Luke and Leia come back together and they sit down, and he says something. I forgot what she says, but then she says, I changed my hair, or whatever. Yeah. And I thought that was really funny, but it was also a callback to what Han says to her. He says, oh, you changed your hair. And she says, oh, same jacket,
Yeah.
And he goes, oh, no, new jacket. I love that stuff. Like, that to me was like, that was one of my favorite moments because it was such a tender, beautiful scene that has brand new context because of her passing. But it gave you just the right giggle that you needed before you got real sad.
No, and I follow on Twitter a handle that it's called One Perfect Shot. and they take still frames that they
was it
believe
her
are like the best.
kissing?
They haven't done that yet, but that to me, like that's one. Now I watch every movie looking for that one perfect shot.
I think
that one will end up there because that was one of the most beautiful moments in any Star Wars movie.
Oh, I 100% agree with you right there. I actually I did want to bring that up before we wrapped up too. Is that there are a lot of very gorgeously shot moments in this movie. A lot of really interesting cinematography stuff that kind of it falls in line with Star Wars, but also it feels new and fresh, and one is definitely the fleet coming on Crait, and
I loved Crait.
Luke walking out and just like staring them down, and the sun's kind of setting a little bit, or even just the sunset when Luke's on the stone out the mountain looking at in Luke's kind of theme from Tatooine plays, and the two suns are there, and it, you choke in your throat a little bit because it's beautiful and it sounds wonderful and it looks good. But hands down, the best moment in this film when Luke and Leia see each other and he walks in and just they only say those couple of lines together, but I will tell you, I got goosebumps watching it because I understand that they shot it and did this way and it didn't have this context to it, but I know they had a relationship where they loved each other in real life, and it's just like he takes her hand and the things they say, and he says this thing to her, and it's supposed to be about Han Solo, but it's also supposed to be about what happens to him, but then it's also about her in real life, is that when he says, nobody's ever really gone, and he gives her the dice from the Millennium Falcon, and you're like, okay, he's saying goodbye to her for real. But in the same scene where he feels he hasn't seen his sister in 30 years because he's been, or 25 years or whatever, 20 years, whatever, because he's shamed that he turned her sister into this thing.
Yeah.
And or turned her sister's son into this thing. And, and so like Mark Hamill's performance right there is just so good because you can feel how sad he is. But then on the other side of this, it's like watching a scene with a ghost. It was almost as if she had come back to life, just so that Mark Hamill, the human being, could have peace with his friend.
Yeah.
So there's just so many layers in what was already a beautifully shot scene that to me, it's like what you said, it could be the best one and maybe any of them.
But all of the entire Crait battle sequence, essentially the first 2/3 of the movie is this chase film. It's a classic chase film where then you find out, well, instead of trying to escape, really they're gonna quietly try to sneak out while they're distracted, and they set up a decoy system, and those that do make it to the planet, because ultimately the First Order catches on to what they're doing, the ones who do make it their backs are against the wall, they're at this resistance base, there is only one way in and one way out, so they have to make a stand, and it's the salt planet that has then this amazing
red under white.
It's basically it's like a crystal core, like kind of if you've been in a salt mine, you know what I'm talking about. But the salt on top, that white with those reds just running throughout it, and then once Rey and Chewie show up to help save the day from the aerial, and they start flying through the core like you can do if you go ride Star Tours. Yes.
Oh, okay, cool. Because I didn't want to watch it yet. I was waiting.
Once they start flying through there and saving the day, oh my gosh, visually, it was, taking that white and red. We've seen it throughout all the marketing, white and red.
Yeah.
As those are the two colors, and people are confused. Well, is it going to be because Rey changes? Is it going to be because Luke changes? Whatever. It's just that look of the last part of it, and it's
also like the color of the rebels in their suits
is.
in the X-Wing, because it's the white vest and the red suit, because it's orange in the original, but it's red in the new one too, so it's like
that whole sequence, I loved it, and then Rey ultimately saving them by force lifting the rocks away.
I will. Oh my gosh. Okay, so I wanted to tell you this too. They refer to Luke as the Last Jedi in The Force Awakens. He says, "Well, we'll find the map that will lead us to the Last Jedi." And I was like, "Oh my god, good lord, it was there all along."
Yeah.
But like, I do like that moment where he says, "I will not be the Last Jedi," and you're like, and she's got the rocks going, and that to me was like, oh, that pure magic of Star Wars, but. I do have one issue in that scene, though. When Rey does show up and she's in the gunner position in the Millennium Falcon, it is following the last time we saw her. It is Kylo Ren and Rey trying to force pull the lightsaber from each other.
Yeah.
And it breaks in half. And we see Kylo Ren like clumped up in a ball, and Hux might shoot him. He might not shoot him. And he like gets up and he's like, "Where's the girl?" I just wanted literally 2 seconds of Rey's body twitching or whatever, because the explosion goes off and the scene cuts. I would have liked something where it showed her maybe waking up or crawling to the door, something where she came to, because it's a lot, because she was in a ship. How did Chewie jump back in, get her off that ship, and do whatever? I just would have liked to have at least seen that had happened, and I guarantee that's probably a deleted scene.
Yeah, I feel the exact same way, and
it's just a weird cut.
No, and I've heard a couple of people actually say that the same way too. Is people are really irritated about the big battle against Kylo Ren and Luke Skywalker. That's
what it's got to be too.
But if you didn't realize, like. I guess that some people won't, but
I did. Like I thought, I was like, oh, he got a haircut and dyed his hair.
Yeah, he did.
That's what I thought, and I was like, no, he got a little hairdo before he came here.
Like it just when I saw his appearance like that, I knew all.
Well, it's supposed to be like Return of the Jedi or something.
He is channeling himself there. That is how he's there. He is using the Force to be there. And once he started moving, instead of actually facing off against him, it's like,
See, when he does that twist and he like rolled around, I was like, oh man, this is going to be awesome. It is. I am a little sad because the selfish kid inside of me really wanted to see Luke Skywalker let loose with a lightsaber fight. But then you're like, when he turned his lightsaber on, I remember immediately going, why is that lightsaber blue? He has a green one, and he doesn't have the green one anymore either, I guess. But like it was the turn where I was like, something's happening here. But you got to think about it. If Luke is the ultimate Jedi, does he even need to raise a lightsaber anymore? You know what I mean? Like and that's kind of like that point too. Is that Kylo Ren relies so much on his power coming through these instruments in the army, and they're the other side.
The best comparison to that is, and I hate bringing up this movie, but in Episode 2 when Yoda is fighting Count Dooku, and while it starts off as lightsabers, it gets to the point where it just becomes about using the Force, is to help fight your battles. And I think Luke is ultimately there, and also, I think it worked out better that way. So. I think really the only thing we might have left to talk about is the one set of characters that no one knew about going into the movie, whether or not we would love them or hate them.
One set. Oh, yeah. I was going to bring this up earlier, too. Okay, so.
Well, we got to save the best for last.
Where do we settle on the Porgs? I love them.
I love them too.
Okay, because just that scene with Chewie, I do feel bad because Chewie and also R2-D2 did nothing this movie except for go be dirty and beep. And
but I also but
he doesn't.
Since Kenny Baker's passed on and he's not there anymore. I mean, I know Peter Mayhew's not in the costume anymore as Chewbacca either. So
somebody was trying to tell me that maybe he was sitting down. He did the sit down scene with the Porgs, and whenever he's walking around, it's the other guy. My friend DJ said that, but I'm not sure. So
I'm not sure.
But I'd have to look into that. But I did think the Porgs were what I like is that they were always there in the background, and it was that moment where you're like, oh, here's that weird Star Wars character that's going to show. They always do these weird alien things or whatever. But just when they're like, and the lips quivering or whatever. And then I also liked that they weren't like Chewie's sidekick. I liked that they were infested rodents in the Millennium Falcon.
Yeah, well, he saved them. So, of course, he's sitting down getting ready to eat. He has two of them, one on a spit, and the other is he's ready to start chewing in, and then they show up with their little sad faces, and he feels for them and ends up basically taking them all to safety. I mean, I'm clearly Team Porg, as you can see from my cell phone case.
Where did you get that?
I got it at Walt Disney World, so I had to.
And that's an iPhone 10, so you can get iPhone 10 Star Wars cases. I might have to. I only got a plain black one. I'm going to have to go down and see those.
But I'm Team Porg all the way. I think they were awesome. They were cute. It also helped that whole political thing that Rian Johnson was doing about animal conservation and making political statements, which I actually will say, well, that's one of the things that everyone's like, the whole...
Oh, because of the animals, those weird animals that were things.
You know what?
I was like, there's always something getting abused in Star Wars.
And the thing, too, is it's not a political statement.
No, it's don't be a jerk.
It's not a social statement either. It's the same people who bring this up time and time again are the people who are constantly talking about politics, saying, well, no, they should have left that out. Why are they trying to make political statements?
Oh my gosh.
Stop talking to me about politics.
The movie is about an empire that has built, the movie is rooted in politics. politics. That's the thing too, and it simplifies it. But that's what all the prequel trilogy was all politics, and the other ones were about characters. Regardless, I do think that this took us into a new area. It will. And I know people will be like, "Oh, what's J.J. Abrams going to do?" But that's the delight of Star Wars. What's next? That's the excitement. I'm excited to see what's next. I'm assuming Rey's going to be training Jedis in the end, in the next one, according to that very end of the movie. At least that's what it hinted at. There are other people that are Force sensitive that are not Skywalkers that can be trained to be Jedis, and so,
there was a whole Jedi temple before Anakin went and started slaughtering kids.
Yeah,
so there's more people out there.
If J.J. Abrams, who reignited that passion we had, no, I don't necessarily think it went away, but you know what I mean. He gave us The Force Awakens. Think about what it could do now, where now he doesn't have to play it safe anymore because Rian Johnson got to play freely, and now he doesn't. He was in a very tight spot.
Yeah.
Like, I have to make it good, but it has to be nostalgic, but it has to be here, but it has to be there, and it's a new company. This whole thing. Think about what he can do now.
Yeah.
And think about how he's going to be like, okay, and he's a Star Wars nerd, so we are going to see some awesome stuff in this next movie. If Rian Johnson proved to us what you can do, and he's a big fan, it was a reason why he went into movies. I think that with J.J. Abrams, we're just going to get this blown out amazing cap on this trilogy.
Kind of like what he did with the very first Star Trek. He didn't really have to play to anyone on that. He
were
made
just
the movie that
thing.
he wanted to make. And then he kind of had to follow suit with the movies he made after, the one movie he made after.
Yeah.
But that first one, he really didn't have to answer to anyone because it was completely different. And I think you're right. He will not play it safe on the final movie. He will do something great, and it will be different, and it will follow what Rian Johnson started, and that is that Star Wars doesn't have to be formulaic at every turn. And I think ultimately fans are going to appreciate it down the road. It's not a thing right now that they might be wild about, but again, looking back on the prequels, everyone was so thirsty for more Star Wars that when the prequels came out, they lost their minds over all of them.
Yeah. And that's the thing, what I'm saying. Give it another shot. See it again now that you know what you're expecting. And I'm telling you, I felt completely different the second time I watched it. The movie moved a lot faster for me that second time. And there are going to be things that you still will never like in the movie. There's a moment in The Force Awakens that I don't like, but it's really just a blooper. But it's just it is Star Wars. It is always ever evolving, and it changes. And I don't want, as much as I have said repeatedly in this, how much I love The Force Awakens, I don't want to see 7 Force Awakens. I want to see 1 Force Awakens. I want to see another movie. And The Last Jedi was the first of these new movies that finally was okay, we can start going into new territory like we used to.
Yeah. Okay.
So rank them.
Okay. You want me to start?
Yeah, you go first.
I would say Empire. Mm-hmm. A New Hope. Mm-hmm. Last Jedi.
Mm-hmm. Oh, hi.
Return of the Jedi. Force Awakens. Rogue One. Then today, I did earlier.
We start
I know
watching the
this
prequels?
is where it's. I actually watched some of the prequels over the weekend because they've been on TNT all weekend, and I rewatched the sequence today just to make sure I felt the way I feel about it. While I understand that Phantom Menace is a terrible movie for the most part, I would rather sit through the Phantom Menace over and over again for that Darth Maul lightsaber sequence than watch the other two. So I would go Phantom Menace, Revenge of the Sith, and Attack of the Clones last.
Okay, and when I was a kid, and when we were both children, when this Phantom Menace came out, the age that all the crap stuff in the movie was aimed at. When it came out on VHS, I watched it every day for 30 days in a row. I'd watch half of it, and I'd watch the other half the next day, every day. That's how much I liked it for a long time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then as I got older, I was and even then, the stuff I didn't like, I was just excited. And it was Star Wars, and it was new. And it was our Star Wars, Although I don't want to say that anymore. But for me, it goes definitely Empire. I mean, I know it's Empire is everybody. It's but it's story, it's visuals, it's a beautiful looking movie still to this day, and it just has, it was the first to really kind of really put those twists out there,
Yeah.
And for me, I'm going to say The Force Awakens, just because it really gives me that Star Wars excitement I love. I don't know if it's A New Hope and Return of the Jedi or Return of the Jedi and A New Hope. And it's not because I don't like any of those movies. I like them all. I love Ewoks. You don't understand. The first Star Wars thing I ever saw was the Ewok movie. And so it's not about that. It's just I've, in recent years, been watching A New Hope. And every time I watch it lately, it feels a lot slower than it used to me. And it's because the first 30 minutes, movies were paced a lot differently in the 70s. And so there is a lot of... As soon as the opening scene concludes on Leia's ship, the droids are doing stuff on that planet for quite some time.
But I feel the same way about all of the Jabba's palace sequence in Return of the Jedi.
That's fair. That's fair. You know. So I'm gonna say A New Hope, obviously, because that gave us Star Wars. You know, Return of the Jedi, and then where am I at? Rogue One. Oh, well, I'm sorry. I don't know where to put Last Jedi.
You said earlier that you would put Last Jedi above Rogue One.
Oh, so. Absolutely. Yeah. So I would say, okay, so let me start with Empire, Force Awakens, A New Hope, Last Jedi, Return of the Jedi, Rogue One, 3, 2, 1.
Okay.
I do like the third one the best of all the trilogy. It's really the only one that I'll repeatedly watch. I don't know why, because for me, the Revenge of the Sith is the whole point of the trilogy is in that one movie. It should have been spread out more.
I understand. I am one of those weird people that I think there's
nothing wrong.
I think the Phantom Menace is almost starting to cycle into it's so bad that it's good territory.
Okay,
like Hayden Christensen is trying so hard and it's not working, and it's just kind of painful to watch.
Oh, and Natalie Portman deserves a terrible... she should have never acted again after that
movie. But watching Jake Lloyd say, and that's pod racing, it's like, that is...
Yippee!
Oh. Yippee! Like, there are just so many moments where that's...
like, but that's not what he says. But.
It is so... bad it's funny in point.
It did give us the best N64 game ever too, you know, other than GoldenEye. It gave us pod racing. So
that's pod racing.
It's pod racing. I'll give him another shot when I finally get him on Blu-ray. I told myself to stop and wait until I get him on Blu-ray, but I do think The Last Jedi could fluctuate in that list for me still, because it's like what Craig said. You got to let it settle, you got to think on it, and you got to see it in the grander scope of things. I don't know where we're going after this. You know what I mean?
It always fluctuates. For a longest time, A New Hope was my favorite.
Yeah.
But then as I've gotten older, I've seen different themes in Empire that have just spoken to me more. They've affected me in different ways. Like in my opinion, this has nothing to do with anymore, and it's just wasting more time. Not that we have to, but like Yoda's theme. His musical theme is, I think, the most beautiful piece of music in any movie ever.
Oh, see,
that's my opinion.
I feel that way with Luke looking at the sunset in A New Hope.
Yeah,
you know, it's that classic Star Wars theme, but it's like,
but it's so
sad
when Yoda pulls Luke's X-wing out of the swamp, and you just hear the like that. Just
it's epitome of Star Wars for you.
Yeah, it's just that is the magic of that movie in all movies. And so while things always
for me,
change,
it's the build in Empire when Han's about to go into the carbonite, and it's just everything is happening, and there's so much noise starting, and the music's welling up, and I love you, I know, and then he goes in and Chewie screams, and
it's another one of those moments.
Yeah, good moments in that one.
Good moments.
But it's like what you said. It changes with time, you know.
Yep.
But, you know, thank you for having this discussion. It went on longer than I think we had anticipated. And we obviously want to know what you guys feel about it. Leave some comments below, or you're welcome to tweet at us because you're doing it anyways. I was trying to keep it off of Twitter just because that's more of a public, like, accidentally see somebody's thing. I was giving people a couple days to see this. So like and share this with a friend who's maybe seen the movie. Keep it to yourself. Give it another week or two. You know, I try and preserve that movie experience for as many people for as long as I can. I give you 2 weeks before I start talking to bloopers, but we just couldn't this week. We couldn't. So Thank you for talking Star Wars with me, Craig.
Oh, thank you.
This could be this is definitely the last Disc Pop of the year. It could be the last one ever. Who knows? It's like, where do we exist? I don't know. I'm just messing with you. So until next time, that'll do it for this episode of Disc Pop.